Howdy. Welcome to Ausgrave Royalty. I am Justin. We are continuing with Bolen's Gods and Goddesses. This is our third season, so to speak, into archetypal psychology. We've covered a lot of the gods and goddesses so far. So check those videos out. And for more on archetypal psychology, check out season one on the channel regarding archetypes by Dr. Anthony Stevens. And then season 2's King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert L. Moore and Douglas Gillette. I say this every video, but it is very true. I have tons of notes. So we're just going to hop right in. I want to say, first of all, like with Aries, I used to like Aries a lot because of his, his power of, God of War and all that. There's like a spectacle to it, like a power. But now I am a fan of him for different reasons, which we'll talk to in regards to the archetype. I also, for some reason, it's one interesting thing I've learned during learning about all this is that he was actually a dancer before he was a warrior. And that kind of reminds me of a lot of great fighters take up dancing. And I'm thinking specifically of Bruce Lee. But anyway, let's get into it. So, Bolen calls Aries the first of what he calls what Bolen calls the rejected sons. We talked about Hermes and Apollo being the favored sons. She says Zeus rejected Hephaestus and detested Aries. And remember, these individuals are being seen symbolically, not just in the mythology. So Zeus, we talked about, Zeus is like the meta, the rule giver, the lawgiver. It's his way or the highway. He's the archetypal authoritarian. He's the CEO. He's what dictates the mainstream. He's the popular kid. He's the high value man, as they call in the manosphere. Hades is like the we'll save that. But Aries is the first of what Bolen calls the rejected sons. So Apollo and Hermes were the favored sons because Apollo more so than Hermes are like of the meta, but Aries and Hephaestus are outside of that, Bolen is saying. She says both gods were also ridiculed or called names by others, and men who are like them are likely to suffer a lack of self-esteem. Both were sons of Hera, a devalued, angry, and impotent mother. As archetypes, their characteristics are not valued by the patriarchy, and hence men who resemble these gods have difficulty being successful. So two things. One, if you're not associated or under the Zeus umbrella, you're going to struggle with self-esteem because Zeus is, he's the meta. He's what's popular. He is Jones of keeping up with the Joneses, right? I think of this, it may be silly, but I always think of music. Like my musical tastes. Zeus is somebody who's like, symbolically, only the top 40, right? And think of all the sheeple, if I may use the crude term as as someone outside the mainstream, they would be perplexed that anyone would listen to anything else. Can you imagine that? It also reminds me of like the Lego movie, like, honey, where's my pants? That's the humor. That's like, and if you go outside of that, don't question Taco Tuesday, that's what this reminds me of, for some reason. But if I find myself liking something in the mainstream, it makes me squirm. So I take pride in being out, different. Um, I care about my musical tastes, right? Anyway, that's my inner snob. And I also found it interesting that Ares was someone who lacked self-esteem and was humiliated and ridiculed by others. You think Ares, like powerful god of war, the warrior, right? But he was not liked. So, Ares as god, archetype, and man is an image of masculine physical power, intensity, and immediate action. And that's going to be key here, the immediacy of the archetype. His heart and instincts literally move him to act and react with his body, unmindful of the consequences. His father Zeus disliked him and sided against him, just as the patriarchy devalues his attributes. And we need to be careful with the term patriarchy. Bolen is writing in the 80s and mostly in the 90s. And even before that, I'm sure with her research. So what those terms meant for Bolen don't necessarily translate to what we think of in 2023. Anyway, I want to read a passage. Forgive me. Here we go. All right, it's kind of lengthy, but I think it's valuable. Ares, whom the Romans called Mars, was god of war, least respected and honored of the 12 Olympians by the Greeks because of his irrationality and battle frenzy. Ares represented the uncontrolled lust for battle and bloodshed. In contrast, as Mars, the Romans held him in high regard, second only to Jupiter in importance, which is Zeus. For them, he was protector of the community and father of Romulus and Remus, the twin founders of Rome. He's portrayed as a vigorous and virile man, often, but not always bearded, usually with a helmet and a shield, sword, spear, sometimes a breastplate, seldom in full armor. He was the only son of Hera and Zeus. However, like Hephaestus, Hera's other Olympian son, in one Roman version, she conceived Ares parthenogenically through an herb whose touch could make the most sterile being fruitful. We have no details of his birth. Giant twins called the Aloidae, sorry about that, almost succeeded in killing Ares, probably when he was still a boy, as were they. They captured him and shut him up in a bronze jar. He was imprisoned for 13 months and would have perished, even though he was a god and thus immortal, which is peculiar. This is Bolen writing. If their stepmother had not told Hermes. When Hermes freed him, he was nearly dead of torment. Gee, I wonder if a traumatic upbringing can turn someone into the god of war. Hera's choice of a tutor for Ares was Priapus, the deformed phallic god. Priapus first trained the boy to be a perfect dancer, and only later to be a warrior. Homer's view of Ares in the Iliad was prevailed. Ares was on the side of the Trojans against the Greeks, and was portrayed by Homer as a bloodthirsty, contemptible, whining braggart who was repeatedly defeated, wounded, insulted, and shamed by his half-sister Athena. And that's a theme here. Athena was the master strategist, and Ares is about like shoot first, think later. Very predictable, so to speak. When a son of his was killed and he charged onto the battlefield against Zeus's orders, Athena berated him, called him blockhead and maniac for losing reason and restraint. He was described as not knowing what is right, for lacking character because he turns now to one and now to another. Ares reacted emotionally. His feelings drew him into battles on the side of men he felt related to, often by blood. Loyalty or retaliation motivated him. and overrode other considerations. For other Olympians, the Trojan War often seemed to be a spectator sport, with half favoring the Greek, half the Trojans. The Olympians themselves entered the battle from time to time, but then according to Zeus's rules. Ares, in contrast, definitely did not see this as a game. When the gods and men fought amongst themselves at another battle, Athena guided one of her favorite heroes, Diomedes, to wound the god with a spear. Ares let out a bellow and complained to Zeus about what Athena had done. Zeus sided with Athena and rejected and humiliated him further, saying, "Don't come to me and whine. There's nothing you enjoy so much as quarreling and fighting, which is why I hate you more than any other god on Olympus." Yet Homer acknowledged that Ares spurred on the Trojan forces as he repeatedly came to their aid, accompanied by his sons, Fear and Panic. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, that's from the book itself. Go buy it for more details. All right. So let's get into it. We're looking at him, shoot first, ask questions later, kind of impulsive, passionate, uncontrolled passion. Ares is the embodiment of aggression. Bolen cites like the Rambo films as the Ares hero. I disagree with her characterization of Rambo there. Rambo's a lot more nuanced than like being a blockhead who shoots people. If you've seen it all, he was a vet, like a military veteran, and it's a film about how vets are treated when they come back and what people can turn into if they don't have support. So Ares' passionate nature, his physicality, and the totality in which he is caught up in the emotion of the moment are the qualities of the Ares lover. This lover doesn't worry about comparisons with others as he makes love to the most sexually experienced goddess. We'll talk about Aphrodite in a moment. His is a lusty, personal sexuality without the ecstatic, transpersonal Dionysus dimension. And we'll talk about Dionysus as well later in the season. As we mentioned, Ares first learned to become a dancer before he learned to be a warrior. Although this side of Ares has not been described much at all, it fits the archetypal pattern of a physical rather than a mental man. Mental being Apollo, Hermes, and Zeus. You could very well be a dancer and predictably known for passion and intensity more than technique. In tribal cultures, and this is important, warriors are dancers. Before battle, the men dance. The drums and music encourage the warrior. So think about, I love this scene in The Northman, right? The berserker dance. They're like growling and becoming animals. They're channeling their aggression, getting into that zone. And Moore and Gillette talked about the warrior archetype. Fascinating element from that was that often when returning from battle, the warriors had to be separated from the rest of civilization so that they could transition back into society. You can't just, the primitives or the ancients knew that you can't just bring them back in. Ironically, that's what Rambo kind of hints at. And there's an alchemical term called containment, which is criminally underused in our language, which is like that kind of energy of returning and being traumatized and PTSD and all that. It doesn't have to be that. It can be grieving or even radical pleasure and enthusiasm and all that. Like we talked about the lover being boundaryless, and I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here, but this is all okay as long as it's contained. We talked about in previous videos on alchemy how there's a prima materia. Let's just call it aggression, right? And within it, it has to be, in order to be transmuted properly, there needs to be a sealed container around it, and it needs to be cooked with fire. And we've talked about that in other videos, so go check those out for more details. But the point is, well, there are a lot of points. Yeah, there's a lot to say, so we'll keep going here. So the Aries archetype, like the god, is disparaged by men who exert power from a distance, who are cool strategists and sometimes deceptive tricksters. Yeah, so Aries is very much of the body, whereas the Zeus, the meta, the mainstream, is all about don't be emotional. Don't ever show your emotions. That's the meta for men, for the Zeus. Like, you want to be cool, high value, don't lose frame, all that stuff. The Aries man is very, not that, very impulsive and, yeah, emotional, basically. And it makes sense that the Greeks didn't like him in their mythology because they idolized thinking and rationality. Like, it's idolizing Mickey versus idolizing Rocky. I don't know. That's not a good example because Rocky is not a good Aries kind of dude. He's actually a more nuanced character too. But yeah. Anyway, let's see. Psychologically, Aries represents Zeus's shadow, that part of himself that he disparaged because it was underdeveloped and or was contrary to the ideal image he had of himself. In our culture, Aries is equally devalued and rejected. Sexuality, violence, even the dancer aspects of Aries are attributes of the inferior sun. I think that's changing, though. I think now, like, the CEO or the high value or the masculine Zeus is now considered toxic, or, the 1% or whatever. Now, actually, looks are more important than ever, and looks are all about the body. Yeah, think of the dating apps and stuff like that. Like, we're a very bodily, like, kind of base culture nowadays versus even when Bolen was writing in the 80s and 90s, and potentially earlier, given all the research she was doing. So terms like patriarchy and stuff like that, and where she's coming from is different in 2023. So I may have already said that, but just in case. But now I think Aries, like dancing, sexuality, violence, like bodily power is prized these days, not thinking or being a good guy or like even money. Typically money's nice for security, but our culture kind of prizes like passion and good looks, and typically there'll be like the rich guy and like the hot guy on the side. Like, there's like a rivalry in women's minds about what they really want. They want both. Who doesn't want it all, right? But typically you don't find all of what you want in one person. So the theory goes. And I have a video on the manosphere for more about that. So, yeah, Bolen is mentioning, a prudent person would not attack anyone who is related to Hades, or has Hades as a prevalent archetype. They would invite retribution, to put it lightly. As Mars, he later protected the citizens of Rome in the same fierce way, as we talked about earlier. Aries joins the battle when someone he cares about is attacked. especially if he or she is getting the worst of it, right? There's a great anime. I'm just into boxing lately, and called Hajime no Ippo, and this archetype reminds me, ironically, of the character Rocky in that show. He's like kind of a champion of the disenfranchised kids and stuff, a hero of the people. Yeah, he's the type of friend that would be like, they say anything to you, I'll kick their ass, so to speak, or I will do bodily harm, like the physical thing. So let's go on here. Bolen notes that when the Aries archetype is repressed, embodied feelings are not accessible to him. The whole aspect remains undeveloped and bottled up, images of the boy locked away in the bronze jar. Rescue is only possible when the man feels the stirrings of the boy in him that was once spontaneous and physically expressive. It was Hermes who saved Aries, metaphorically, from the jar. The boy, when Aries has been so long bottled up, physical reactivity to people and events, the embodied emotional responses can be totally outside conscious awareness. Aries, the man, is active, assertive, intensely emotional, and thinks before he acts. And this trait gets him into various difficulties. An Aries boy, and we say Aries boy, whatever, each of the sexes has access to all the archetypes. So I can find traits in Demeter, who we talked about last time, that I as a man identify with. Women out there, it's possible for women to identify even with Aries. We have the anima and the animus that lets us access the contrasexual qualities of the other. So men for the feminine, women for the men, or for the masculine. So even though we're talking about an Aries boy or whatever, they can be females. An Aries child is often energetic and a demanding handful, who lacks caution and doesn't think before he acts and gets bruises and stuff like that. He needs guidance. He needs more guidance than any other children. And often he gets just the opposite because he's such a handful. Having a Hera mother means that the mother's major bond is with the husband, not with the child. So he can get overlooked and suffer from low self-esteem. In terms of work, Aries is usually drawn to action and using tools and enjoys moving around. He doesn't fit into the corporate hierarchy, thus like the Zeus realm. His success depends greatly on luck, for better or worse, because Aries doesn't really like to follow a long-term plan. His success may also come from one thing leading to another. With women, he gravitates towards women he genuinely likes to be with and with whom he can be spontaneous and physical with. Whether making love or dancing, enjoying food or playing games, he's totally involved and most comfortable with women who also can be this involved. However, when an emotional, wounded, or angry Aries man who's physically can become physically abusive, and if it combines with a woman who has low self-esteem, the combination can be one of those like destructive, dysfunctional relationships. Aries and Athena don't really get along because the Aries man can find themselves being judged and found wanting by these types of women. With other men, Aries likes to be with other men who do things, like tease each other, playing sport, all that stuff. He's not interested in deep conversation or talking philosophically. It's mostly sports, women, and whatever his friends are doing. He bonds with his friends and physically comes to their defense. They're especially weak to being shunned or scapegoated by peers or made fun of. This is especially painful and intolerable. Not only is he hurt, but he also feels deprived of the camaraderie that he really wants. If an Aries finds himself married, he is grounded in his family and in the stability of his life, has self-esteem and the esteem of others. An Aries man neither plans on marriage nor avoids it. He gets intensely involved and doesn't think about the long term. Children often result as a result of his spontaneity, not a plan. Like they're usually not planned. If he is a presence in the children's lives, he usually looms large. If life has turned out well for him, he and his family, the children in his family are the central parts of his life. He dances with his daughter and takes her up on his shoulders. But conflicts can arise if his children grow older and become mature, or they are introverted or intellectual and cannot share his interests, basically. Bolen says that Aries really needs to develop his emotional control. Hermes represents the capacity to communicate and think on his feet, usually in an inventive or clever way. Bolen says this is a great asset for Aries to have as well. And Apollo is great too. It's the archetype of discipline, emotional distance, self-control, and long-range targets. So that can help Aries kind of tap into the meta to his advantage to actually accomplish and achieve great things rather than a bunch of chaotic short-term ups and downs. Apollo can help set a goal, a long-term goal, break down the steps, and help execute those steps. So just some reactions to Aries in the last few minutes here. I'm not very in touch with this archetype, for better or worse. I'm more of in my head than in my body. I've never had any friends that were in the gym or sports people. Although I did play a ton of basketball, but that wasn't, I was very active as a kid. So I guess there was part of that back when I was a kid, and I was competitive and I had a temper. So yeah, I can see Aries kind of in my childhood, but I was kind of that was kind of beat out of me by life. Public school, grades are everything, self-control, don't show emotion because you can be teased and all that. But I've since kind of processed that, and I think I need to get back into Aries somewhat, be more passionate, make more mistakes, not be as careful, take risks, get in the gym. I am boxing now, so I'm tapping into that. Aries helps me also get through all these projects, building a channel. I'll be making a game soon. I've done electronic music, stand-up comedy. Aries reminds me of the warrior archetype from season 2. Gives me energy, raging war against my projects, getting them done. Anyway, I think Aries is pretty admirable, and I hope to grow more of them within my life. Let me know what y'all think. I'm going to end the video here. Hope y'all are getting value of this. There's details in the description y'all should check out. And take care, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.